Anybody else? David? Okay. So. So I am Sandy Close, the Director of Ethnic Media Services, and have the great honor of being partners with the Federal Trade Commission in what has been a almost decade-long effort to reach out to the diverse audiences served by ethnic media. This is one of the first federal agencies that wanted specifically to do events with the audience, to reach the audiences of ethnic media, to raise awareness about consumer fraud. So we're going to begin with our host, Rosario Mendez, who will give a few opening remarks. And then we have our keynote speaker, David Chu, who has to leave at 11:30. So we're on a tight time schedule. But after David Chu speaks and we have a few Q&A, we are then going to our opening panel. And then we're going to open it up to discussants who are on the front lines of communities across the Bay Area. And just a word to say, we're delighted to welcome ESL students from Laney College. Let's give them a hand. They work under the supervision of David Lee, who many of us know from the Chinese Voter Education Committee. Good, this is a little louder, thank you. So I'm going to start with Rosario and then lead into City Attorney David Chu.
Thank you, Sandy. Should I stand up, Sandy? Stay here.
Yeah.
You want me to stand?
Yes. Well, it's just easier for people.
Everybody to see in here. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Rosario Mendez, and I am with the Federal Trade Commission. I come from Washington, D.C. I'm in the headquarters office of Washington, of the headquarters of the Federal Trade Commission. And we have representatives here from the regional office that you'll meet later. But I wanted to first welcome you. Thank you so much, Mr. Xu, for being here. Thank you for the students and for the reporters and other advocates and stakeholders that are here today. These briefings are so important for us. I work in the Division of Consumer and Business Education, which means that we are the office that puts out all the campaigns for the public to educate people about their consumer rights and also the businesses about their responsibilities. And we can only do that if we know what kind of things are happening in the marketplace so that we can educate people, let them know and alert them about different practices that may be bad practices, that may be scams, that may be frauds, so that they can spot it and avoid them. And also so that we can give guidance to businesses and say, hey, you are doing this practice, but this is impacting people in a bad way, or you're violating the law. You need to either change that practice or you need to stop it. So it's very important for you and us to talk, because this is an opportunity for us to hear about what's happening in your community. The Asian American and Pacific Islanders community is a very important community in the country, and you should be heard, right? Whatever consumer problem is happening that is impacting you personally is probably impacting your entire community. And it's so important for the FTC to hear that, so we can do something about that, or that we can at least alert others about the problem, and then you're better prepared to tackle it if something happens. I already mentioned a little bit about my specific office, but I'll tell you about my agency, the Federal Trade Commission. It's primarily an enforcement agency, which means that we investigate cases and we shut down companies that are doing bad practices. And from the education perspective, it really goes hand in hand, right? Because we can shut down a company for scamming people or for doing bad practices, but if no one knows about that, then we haven't really completed the cycle. We need to let people know when that happens, and so it's kind of like a big a circle, right? You tell us what's happening, we do something about it, we tell the public, about how they can protect themselves in the future. I also want to mention that this, as Sandy was mentioning, we have been doing this for, I think I want to say since 2014 or something like that, for a long time. And we've evolved, right? We started with like smaller groups and then larger groups, but the commonality is that we've always going to local communities, because it's not enough to stay in Washington, D.C. We got to come to the communities and hear from people. And we have had many examples that have come out of groups like this, where we have been able to put alerts about scams. For example, just in December, we were in Louisville, and there was a person, a Korean reporter, who talked to us about a scam that he had heard of a person that had lost all this money on a scheme where basically he had received communication from someone saying that the king of Cambodia needed help releasing some money. And if that they were able to help, that they could get some of that money. And this person ended up paying the scammer thousands and thousands of dollars. And obviously it was a scam, he lost all the money. We were able to put an alert on that particular scam in Korean. The reporter pushed it out to his network, and it was picked up by 17 other Korean newspapers and outlets. So, the ripple effect of knowing what's happening and putting alerts is very real. And I'm very excited to have a discussion with you all today. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things like that comes out of that. I have my cards here. Please feel free to take it and to reach out to me during the day and even later. We hope that this is not just today, but that we can continue this conversation. Thank you very much.
One quick question.
Yes.
What is the most dramatic trend you have seen since the pandemic? Because as journalists, we would love to have a kind of lead idea from you before we go to Attorney General.
Yes, that's a very good question, and I should have mentioned this. So what we have seen, through the years, and specifically last year in 2022, is that people are losing more money than ever to scammers. I think last year we said people that reported losing scam to us in general from the entire country and from all communities reported losing $8.8 billion to scams. And that is the most that we have ever seen before. And so we do see that people are losing more money. Scammers are everywhere. They're not just on the phone anymore. They're on the phone, they're on email, they're on text, they're on social media, but they still are in the mail as well, and they're in advertising as well. So it's important to know that people are losing a lot of money now, and scams are everywhere. And the way to protect yourself is by knowing, educating yourself, getting some information so that you can spot and avoid that scam.
Thank you. And now for our keynote speaker, very short keynote, but who better than David Chu? For as long as I have known David's work, consumer fraud and protecting consumer rights has been a red thread to his entire career. So very happy to have David Chu. Do you want to?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Well, let's do a little better than that. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Get the juices flowing. Let me first just start off by thanking someone who is a true force of nature. When I was a young civil rights attorney, now almost 25 years ago, I heard of the name Sandy Close, but she is someone who has single-handedly help to ensure that our diverse California communities get the information that we need and helps to empower our communities to work with government and move forward. So could we please give a hand to this amazing woman? Thank you so much. I also want to just first start off by welcoming you on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco as one of your local electeds, and just say that today's forum really brings together a number of critical communities. First and foremost, I want to thank the representatives from our API community who are here. I often brag that San Francisco and the Bay Area, we are the capital of the Asian American community in the country. I have some debates about that with my friends from New York and Hawaii, but we have, given our numbers, given our influence, given the diversity of our communities, we really do lead the way when it comes to how our community is taken care of. So I want to just thank all of you who have been doing that, both in the press as well as in our community and who are advocates. I want to take a moment and thank Professor David Lee and your students, because you are the next generation of folks who are going to be carrying on this work. And then, of course, to those of you who are consumer advocates, thank you for your advocacy. And I want to just take a moment and in particular, thank the FTC for your leadership here. Rosario, to Carrie O'Brien, who heads up the regional office here, her colleague, Emily Coe-Burton, and others. For the better part of 100 years, this is an agency that has led on consumer issues. But I will say, unlike other agencies, they don't necessarily get all the limelight I think they deserve. And so part of what today is about is really showcasing the work that this agency is doing and the partnership that they are engaged in with agencies like mine, as well as with community. The fact of the matter is that for the past decade, the Business and Consumer Education Division has been engaged in outreach specifically to our communities around scams, and scams obviously change over time. And so this work that you guys are doing is so important. I appreciate the fact that you've done dozens of listening tours like this, but as we just discussed, this is the first convening of this type in this state with our API community. And we are very grateful that you are spending the time to organize with us, to prepare with us in how we do this. And they're going to speak more about the work that they do, but from the lawsuits that they bring, to the cases that you win, to the money that you bring on behalf of victims, we're very grateful for that work. And I look forward to the work of the San Francisco City Attorney's Office continuing with the FTC. So let me talk about why we are here. What is the problem that we are trying to engage with? So in recent decades, there have been very well-funded, very well-organized pushes by bad actors, whether they be individuals or certain bad companies, to really limit the ability of consumers to hold companies responsible for fraud and for scams. And one of the things that I will highlight as a city attorney is in recent years, we've seen consumers who've had their rights literally stripped away, whether it be because of arbitration clauses and agreements, whether because of provisions that prevent certain consumers from organizing as class actions, from being able to assert their legal rights. And this has been a very, very troubling trend. I will then layer on that the fact that a lot of the folks who are being victimized, they're often low income, English may not be their first language, and in many instances, they cannot afford the scam that are victimizing them. And even one email scam could be completely catastrophic at destroying the lives of families in our communities. I will tell you, given that we are in one of the most expensive regions in the country, or for that matter, in the world to live, if you are a low wage, say minimum wage immigrant worker, it takes 3 full-time minimum wage jobs to be able to afford a 2-bedroom place to rent in our community. So what does that mean? One scam could be the difference between you being able to pay the rent and you being on the street, you being able to put food on the table, or having to deal with the impact of that scam. And so that is what is at stake. I want to take a moment and talk about, you'll hear from the FTC about their authority and their powers, but I want to talk a little bit about what my office can do. And what I'm about to describe is true not just for the San Francisco City Attorney's Office, but for the largest city attorney and county counsel's offices in the state. There are 7 offices, including mine. So my office in San Francisco, the city attorney of San Jose, the city attorney of LA, the city attorney of San Diego, as well as the county council's offices in Santa Clara, Los Angeles, and San Diego that have certain authorities to bring actions on behalf of consumers that are similar to the civil authorities of the California Attorney General and are similar to the authorities that the FTC has. We can conduct investigations, we can bring lawsuits to address fraud, unlawful or unfair business practices, as well as nuisances. And we're able to focus our litigation on practices that hurt vulnerable immigrant communities. We have been doing this for a number of years, and I just want to mention that just in this past month, we have announced, because of the flood of cases that we have seen, our office has set up an online complaint portal because we want to make it easy for residents in San Francisco and around California to help report to us. And I will mention our portal is translated in Chinese, Tagalog, Spanish, etc., to make sure that we are addressing the language and linguistic diversity of our communities. So you may be wondering, what type of cases are we talking about? Let me just take a few minutes to explain just the span of victimization that we are seeing, that we've been seeing over the years, starting with those who are seeking advice or services when it comes to immigration. There has been a whole cottage industry of so-called immigration consultants who purport to be able to provide immigration legal services, but in reality are literally just taking money from our community members, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 at a time, providing no helpful legal advice, and in many instances, actually causing those immigrant families to be put into deportation proceedings. This has been ongoing for years. We actually have a case at this very moment involving a so-called immigration fraud artist in our city. But I just want to mention that as a very unfortunately typical story that we have seen all over the country. When it comes to health and safety, we have seen numerous instances of scams that have been perpetrated against our community. So I'll give an example in another context. Years ago, there were paint companies that thought that they could get away with putting lead into their products that literally are killing our families and in particular poisoning immigrant and kids of color. On behalf of the state of California, my office and 9 other councils around the state, we brought a lawsuit against the largest paint companies in the world and have been able to get them to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to help remediate the impact of what we're talking about. Our office, along with literally thousands of other cities and counties in the country, we brought a major set of lawsuits against the opioid industry, given the impact of when that industry flooded our communities with billions of pain medication that were marketed and falsely advertised. We are making sure that there's accountability there. And at this moment, San Francisco, we brought in over $100 million just under that litigation alone. Financial products, as well as those who are purporting to provide credit. We've filed cases against payday lenders like Check and Go and Money Mart for their marketing of short-term products that are usurious, that have taken advantage of consumers who are not being educated on their rights. We have brought cases against national banks like Bank of America and the National Arbitration Forum for unlawful practices that they have conducted when it comes to credit card arbitration schemes. Other types of consumer transactions that we have seen fraud perpetrated in, we have brought successful lawsuits against travel companies, online travel companies like JustFly and FlightHub over predatory scams and hidden fees. Rental car companies like Hertz for misleading customers into paying steep fees that they weren't supposed to be charging. Tax preparation companies like the Oakland-based franchise Instant Tax Services, once the nation's 4th largest tax preparation service for defrauding low-income immigrant taxpayers. And then finally, I'll just mention, just a couple weeks ago, we brought a lawsuit against a company that had been victimizing small businesses up and down California by purporting to essentially be a government agency, sending out marketing materials suggesting that small businesses had to do certain things and pay this company in order to stay in compliance with labor laws. So I share all of these examples because The creativity on the part of scam artists, the creativity on the part of folks who are looking to steal money from our communities, particularly our low-income immigrant communities, can't be underestimated, is constantly evolving. And it's up to all of us working together to address this. Let me just end with the following, which is in order for agencies like the FTC or the San Francisco City Attorney's Office to be effective, we have to be in partnership with the community. We cannot move forward unless we have evidence of wrongdoing. And that evidence can only be brought to us by the community. So for those of you who are reporting on this, your ability to get the word out will hopefully trigger family members and consumers to say, you know, something happened to me recently. I was just asked by a reporter if there's anything particular about immigrant communities that make our communities a bit more vulnerable. And I might suggest the following. When you are defrauded, whether you are of an immigrant background, whether English is your first language, it's natural to feel like that might have been my fault. I was dumb to let that happen. Within our immigrant communities, we know that when these experiences happen, there is even more of a likelihood that folks may not want to share that because it's embarrassing, because they think it is our fault. And part of why we're here today is to say, no, it's not your fault. You are a victim of a fraud. You are a victim of a scam. You need to have your rights vindicated. You need justice done. We are the agencies that are looking to do that justice. So we encourage you to reach out to us, fill out a form on an online portal, call us. I want to just take a moment. I have a couple of great staff who are here. If you are within the API community and you want to let us know some information, I'm going to ask Kenneth Chen if you could raise your hand. If you are a consumer advocate and you know of an actor who is out there, John George, who's a deputy city attorney in my office, please reach out to him. Or if you're part of the press, feel free to reach out to Alex Barrett Shorter. But we are here, we're your partners, and we're looking forward to, with the FTC, continue to make sure that we are vindicating the rights of all of our community members. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to our force of nature, Sandy Close. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you. Two questions, and if I don't get hands from you, I will ask the questions. So I'd rather have the questions come from you. Who wants to ask a question? Jean Ho, News for Chinese.
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to comment like that. Comment for everybody to see that the victims are using non-English first language and all this stuff. But the very truth is that people like me, I was a victim myself. I speak English perfectly fine. I've been in the country for 43 years. I am none of that. And I am a victim, and my friends who are pretty much in the same class like me, they were all victims. So victims does not translate to this low income or not English proficient. It's everybody. So thank you.
Okay, well, this is why we call ethnic media advocacy media, voice for and with community.
We're going to have to talk to you afterwards to figure out how we vindicate your rights.
Okay. We have a question here
My
from,
question is, what are the capabilities in your office to effectively change the ADA problem that we had last year?
So you're talking to the American Disabilities Act issues. So this is one of the biggest challenges that our local community is facing. And it's really great that we have our federal partners here because the ADA is a federal law. I will tell you, a number of years ago when I was on the Board of Supervisors, we tried to tweak local law to address this, but found that there was significant federal preemption. I went to the state legislature, as some of you know, and for 7 years, we made some tweaks at the state level to try to protect particularly small immigrant businesses that have been victimized by predatory ADA fly-by-night lawyers. But at the end of the day, this unfortunately really is a federal issue. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about whether Congress in particular might be willing to take a look at this. I would be happy to engage in continuing conversations with the FTC. I'm not sure it's within their purview, but that's the focus of this really has to be federal. Now, I will say there is another route that has been pursued, which is, and for those of you who do not know what we're talking about, the Americans with Disabilities Act is a federal law that creates all sorts of obligations for folks who have, for example, local storefronts to be able to permit access into local retail spaces. But unfortunately, there have been some unscrupulous lawyers that have filed literally thousands of lawsuits in lawsuits that we think don't have much basis and have been very much targeting communities like Chinatown, Little Saigon, the Mission, the Tenderloin here in San Francisco. So this is ongoing. When I was in the legislature, we actually got money to San Francisco to help support small businesses that were fighting these claims. But the law itself is very much governed at the federal level. There's, I believe, a Ninth Circuit case as we speak that's being litigated on some of these issues right now that I worked with some of our local advocates to weigh in on. We'll see what happens there, but ultimately, we really do need assistance from our federal leadership on this.
Okay, thank you. Do you have time for two more
Sure.
questions?
Yep.
And then we're going to go to our first panel. Jeff. And more on Journal.
A couple days ago, one FBI agency just told me, thank you. So just one more question. So a couple days ago, I interviewed the FBI agency. So he told me some bad guys commit crime or in Asian countries like China or other Asian countries. So it's very hard to work with the other department to address the issues. How would the city attorney and the FBI and the other departments work together to address these issues? As you know, some crimes happen online. Yeah.
So I should mention that an agency like mine, we work regularly with many federal partners, including the FBI. And in fact, just yesterday, I will just mention that the new U.S. Attorney and the FBI and my office and the San Francisco DA's office, we held a community forum similar to this, talking about hate crimes in our community, particularly against Asian Americans. We work closely with the FBI, and it is entirely true that when there are bad actors who are overseas, the FBI working with other federal agencies are often the only ones that have that long arm to reach into other countries and work with other countries to get perpetrators brought to justice. And so even if you believe you have been scammed by someone outside of this country, please report that, because that helps all of us alert the appropriate authorities with regard to what must happen.
And then very selfishly, a reporter with Ethnic Media Services, last question. Sorry, Pete, and then Solange.
Okay, sorry, easy question. What are you doing to prepare for the rise of artificial intelligence in terms of scams? Because there's a lot of talk about being able to mimic voices. You can get a call that sounds like a relative and it's artificial intelligence. So how are agencies adapting to the technology?
So I have to say, the rise of artificial intelligence and the possibilities when it comes to crimes and scams is frightening. And I think there's a lot of conversation about what ought to happen. I'll just note that just yesterday, there were major technology leaders from around the world that signed a letter to AI leaders saying that we need at least a pause in the development of that technology until regulatory structures come into place to appropriately handle that. And I think that is entirely appropriate. I have to admit, I know this is an area that federal government has been really focused on, because these advances are happening so quickly, but it's certainly something that is being discussed as we speak. And I don't think at this moment we can really contemplate all the possibilities of how artificial intelligence can be used to scam folks. But just the example you gave, and I'll repeat it again, we know that there are voiceover technologies that can be used to mimic your loved ones. So literally you could get a call or a message from someone and it will sound like your mother, it will sound like your brother, your wife, saying something has happened, I need you to go to the bank right away and wire money to this account. Part of what we all have to do collectively is not just track that, but educate our community on what that's about, so that we're not inadvertently stepping into additional scams.
Okay, and I'm sorry, Selene, very quickly, do you have a question?
Yeah,
Because we're,
I had the
make it
honor
short.
of covering the ADA, thank you for Sandy
Yeah.
Morgan, but my question is about the immigration fraud artists you'd mentioned. When that started here on a systematic scale, if there's any one community that's being targeted, the origin of it, most dramatic trend, in Sandy's words.
I would say this has been going on since I was doing immigrant rights work in the at least in the late 90s and likely before. Our immigration legal system is so complicated And the need on the part of our immigrant families to get legal assistance is so intense that it has unfortunately been all too easy for immigrant fraud artists to purport their businesses and say, hey, we're open for business. We want to help you get asylum. We want to help you get legal status. Come here, pay us $5,000. And our communities trust these individuals, particularly oftentimes when they're from our community, and will fork over $5,000. And it won't be until a year or two later that they realize, oh my God, the paperwork that was submitted by this fraud artist not only is not going to get me my immigration status, but is going to cause me to be deported. The most serious of these cases, or the most highly publicized cases, have been in the Latino community. I will just mention, we had a case involving a gentleman by the name of Lacayo, who was operating out of the mission here in San Francisco. A number of years ago, we learned about his activities. We actually brought a successful lawsuit against him, including an injunction and penalties that he paid. He promised the court that he was going to stop. And what did we learn this year is that he has just restarted his operations and continued to victimize our vulnerable immigrant family members. And so this work continues, and this is just yet another example of why we need a two-way street. If anyone in this community, if you hear of someone like that, please let us know. We happen to learn from advocacy organizations that he was continuing to peddle his non-existent services, and that's why we decided to act yet again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David Chu.
I'm going to just make one final point based on, I think, something that was said by the reporter who had been scammed, which is, you're right, scams impact. We're here in part because we know that our immigrant communities for whom English may not be their first language are often the targets of scams. But these scams we know are happening to millions of Americans for whom English is their first language. And one of the things that's been so tricky about this is oftentimes companies put a lot of legal boilerplate in their contracts that mean nothing unless you are trained in the law. And for those of us who are lawyers, we read them and they're asserting that, for example, a consumer can't bring their own lawsuit against a company, that they have to go into what's known as mandatory arbitration, or that they can't band together with other similarly situated individuals to bring a class action lawsuit. The FTC, my office, some of the other offices I've mentioned, we have an ability to enforce the law despite arbitration clauses, despite provisions that prevent the creation of class action. So it's even more important for you to reach out to us because we are able to enforce the law in ways that private lawyers cannot. So let me just close again by thank you for your time and thank you for the partnership. Looking forward to more work we can do together. And my hope is the next time the FTC is able to organize something like this, we'll have more wins that we can talk about because of this collaboration. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So let me give you a little bit of the scope of our remaining hour. We have a great panel of experts on the front lines, and then we have a great assembly of community activists and stakeholders and storytellers. So I'm going to ask our panelists, because we are running a little late now, to keep your remarks a little shorter. But what a wonderful two opening statements to start us off. We please know we want this to be a conversation. So if a reporter has a burning question from a speaker that just spoke, raise your hand and we will try to integrate that into the flow of the first panel. So we're going to begin with Denise Oki, who is with the Western Regional Office of the Federal Trade Commission. They are the boots on the ground here in the Bay Area. And Denise, thank you for leading off our panel.
Well, thank you, Sandy. It's hard to follow City Attorney David Chu, but we'll try. I hope you bear with me. I'm going to remain seated, and it's hard to see people in the back, but I'm happy to talk with you guys after our panel during lunch or so. And I am an attorney, as Sandy said, with the Western region of the San Francisco office of the FTC. I am one of many representatives here in this room today, so I want to thank you for being here. The Western region San Francisco office is one of 8 regional offices of the FTC that work hard to protect you from scams and unfair businesses. We investigate data security breaches, privacy violations, false advertising, and a wide variety of frauds and scams. Where appropriate, we bring lawsuits to force changes to businesses' practices, and in some cases, shut down businesses engaged in bad practices. As a regional office, we are a local resource. We want to connect with every community to learn about particular issues, how to disseminate information clearly and effectively to a particular audience, and how to help people avoid the scams. We work closely with advocacy groups and local law enforcement partners to discuss scams and frauds affecting the Bay Area. For example, we have a bi-monthly meeting with California state and city attorneys, representatives of direct legal aid groups. Many of you are here in the room, so thank you for being here. Those meetings also have federal partners and consumer advocacy organizations. And our goal with those meetings is to share information, identify emerging trends, and look for opportunities to collaborate. And our office also participates in numerous outreach programs and events to help spread the word about how to avoid scams and frauds. And we try to educate consumers and the public on really how to avoid the scams and what to do if you have experienced a scam or if you were a victim of a scam. But I will actually, in your handout, there are a couple of flyers and maps that I just wanted to point out. And we'll transition here. We can only bring the cases that we know about. And as City Attorney David Chu was talking about, hearing from you, having you guys report what you are seeing, having you guys report the frauds and scams and bad practices are the way that we can do our job and to investigate and bring cases. So one of the handouts in the packet is a double-sided map. One side has California data, the other side has Bay Area specific data. And that is from the it's a Consumer Sentinel network. It's a reporting system that the FTC runs. And you can go to ftc.gov.explore data. That data is current as of December 31st of 2022. So it's the most current information that we have. I just wanted to point out that on both sides of that, of the printout, imposter scams top the list of the top frauds that we're seeing. And so imposter scams can come in a variety of ways, but there's really one kind of, they work the same way. You know, the scammer pretends to be someone that you trust, and they convince you to send money. That can be, I think you might have heard of the Social Security people calling, or IRS, romance scams. That has been on the upward trend that we have seen. Nanny or caregiver scams, or tech support. We've also seen that kind of move straight to your laptop. And then something that City Attorney David Chu had mentioned, family emergency and grandkid scams. You know, there's someone calls pretending to be a grandson and asking the grandmother to wire money. That is, excuse me, something that we have seen. But one of the things that you may not, the scam that has affected you or your community may not be on that list. And that is kind of one of the reasons that we are here, that we want to hear from you and that we want to know as much as we can. One thing we do know is that different communities experience frauds and scams in different ways. They may speak your language, they may know something personal about you, again, to gain your trust in order for you to send the money. And one thing to look out for when dealing with scams, or kind of a red flag, if you will, is the type of money that they're asking you to send, or the process, whether it be cryptocurrency or wire transfer or having you buy a gift card. We've seen that as that's on the rise. But again, one of the reasons that we are here is that we don't hear from the AAPI community as much. And we really want to make the point that reporting is really vital to us, to do our jobs, and in turn to protect you and to protect the community. And even if a scammer does not reach you in particular, even though we have had one example of someone that was scammed here in the room, they might reach your family members, your neighbors, your community members. And so one way that you can report to us, to the FTC, is by going to report fraud, all one word, .ftc.gov. That should be on your flyer. So all those important websites and information should be there. And you can, when you go to reportfraud.ftc.gov, you can tell us your story. You can tell as much information as you feel comfortable doing so. You can provide all the information. And again, as you may not feel comfortable doing that. You can have someone else do that. You can report anonymously. There we go. Really, it's the information is so vital to our work, and we really just we want to hear from you. And one point, right now, the only way to report at reportfraud.ftc.gov is in English and Spanish, and we recognize that is not ideal. It's a limitation. We are working on that. We understand, and that is again something that is going to be important for us to collaborate going forward and to build our relationships. All right.
Thank you. So this is a very important realization that the FTC is here. You have boots on the ground. They're right in this room.
Many of
That
us.
we can double the impact of working at the city and state level by also working at the federal level with your enforcement powers. So that's very important. Thank you. We're going to go to our next speaker, Desiree Nguyen Orth, and she is with the East Bay Community Law Center. And when I talked to her on the phone, it was like pushing a button. Suddenly, this passionate voice came out. We think consumer fraud, yes, we know it's there, but these people, you heard it with David, you heard it with Rosario, you heard it with Denise. These are passionate fraud busters. And we're very lucky to have them today for 2 hours. So I will go to you, Desiree Nguyen Orth.
Thank you, Sandy.
And if you want to do the, some people are more comfortable.
I am not.
Okay.
I just want to stand up so that everyone can take a look and see me, because I'm the person that you'll probably be speaking with if you call our office for help. Thank you very much for having me. I'm the director of the Consumer Justice Unit at the East Bay Community Law Center. We're located in Berkeley, California, but we provide services throughout Alameda County, as well as rural areas throughout the state. I want to talk today a little bit about what we've seen, what trends we've seen in terms of scams, but I do kind of want to get to the heart of the issue here. Scams, that little 4-letter word, seems to put a lot of distance between you and me and people who may not have been scammed and the actual problem. The reality is that scams happen every day, and it doesn't look like a scam because we don't feel like victims. Okay, it's being taken advantage of. It's being tricked into doing something that you did not want to do. That's what a scam is. It's really important to recognize these signs and recognize the issues that come with being defrauded, because a family member will likely be very, very embarrassed about what happened to them when they explain it to you. And every person in this room, every person that's watching and listening, you're the bridge. You're the bridge that can really help that person and advocate for that person to get them to the right place where they can get some help. Now, one of the biggest issues that we see with people who have been defrauded is that fear of feeling like they're stupid or they're dumb, they should have noticed, but also it could be immigration status. It could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of shame. It could be your position in the community. Those are internal, blocks that are never going to go away many times, but advocating for someone to get them to a place like our organization or our partner organizations at Bay Legal, HERA, that's really something that you can do, like an affirmative step that you can do to help that person get some help and get maybe some closure there. We work very closely with the FTC. We work closely with the city attorney's office. We work closely with the DA, and we can bridge that gap for you if you're afraid or your family member is afraid or your friend is afraid to come talk to the authorities, because they are authorities, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing. How does this play out? Typically, a lot of our clients that come to us with issues surrounding fraud have been duped into investing money. That's one of the biggest things that we've seen in 2023 is people trying to invest in their future, trying to find some way to put their money into a nest egg where they can have some sort of security, right? We've seen people invest their entire retirement along with other people's retirement into investment scams upwards of $100,000, only to lose that. We've seen cryptocurrency scams. We've also seen things that are not scams, that are just really bad investments. We're seeing people invest into companies that have false promises, and none of this is illegal. None of this is, the false promises that they're making are not illegal. They're just legal enough to make it sound enticing. And then you invest, and then you lose your money. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The other thing that we see a lot that is really overlooked is small businesses. Small businesses do not have the same consumer protection rights as individual consumers do, but small business owners make decisions the same way that they would if they were a consumer themselves. If you're a small business and you take out a loan, for example, for your business, many businesses are required to sign personally to guarantee that loan for their business. That means that they can be collected upon for their business debt, but not enjoy necessarily the protections that you would have as a consumer. You can be harassed, you can be called names, you can be called multiple times. It's really about knowing your rights right now. Some of the other things that I wanted to talk about are just systematic issues that we're having. So let's move away from the idea of crime and fraud and scams for a minute. Let's talk about the issues that people are facing to meet their daily needs, right? Just simply not having enough money is a big, big problem. And what we're seeing is this niche be filled in the financial sector because there's a demand for more money on short-term, loans or paydays. But there's also a demand for the money that you've already earned. We're seeing earned access groups come up. We're seeing debt settlement companies come up that take advantage of marketplace confusion. Many of the calls that we get are around how do I manage my debt? I have too much debt. I have not been sued, but I'm really struggling to keep up with my finances right now. What do I do? There are a lot of companies that are out there to fill that niche. You look on Google and say, how do I manage my debt? You're going to get advertisements right away from debt settlement companies. And these are legal companies. These are companies that are operating a legitimate business, but the way that the business is understood to operate it just doesn't make that connection with the consumer. So many times you're paying money to a company to try to settle debts that you cannot afford to pay. and that doesn't really make sense. There's a lot of marketplace confusion. And so, one of the things that we're working towards is trying to educate consumers to empower them, understand your options, understand what services are out there, understand what is predatory. We've launched our self-help website as of yesterday in preparation for this event that has a lot of information out there because we want to be out in the community doing more events like this, talking more directly to the folks who are impacted about understanding and knowing your rights and understanding the products and services that are available and that are harmful. Okay, so please take a look. I'm going to pass it on to the next speaker.
I'm just curious, how many of you have needed money and gotten into a either investment opportunity or a payday loan? These are so common. And what I'm hearing is that these groups are there to advise, to prevent it from happening. You can contact, that's what I'm hearing, Desiree. We can contact these offices, the FTC, the East Bay Community Law Center, Housing and Economic Rights, Alameda County Law. I mean, I didn't know these were out there, and I bet a lot of our audiences don't know either. You don't have to try it and get scammed. You can get advice before it happens. So thank you. That's a very important point. Our next speaker is Mava Elise Brown, who is the founder and director of the Housing and Economic Rights, HERA, in Oakland. But I may have jumped too fast. Was there a burning question or comment?
I had a
Yes.
burning comment.
Great. From our host, the
Hi, I'm
FTC.
Emily Burton from the FTC, and I just wanted, Desiree pointed out, one of the issues that small businesses face is that there's not, many states lack jurisdiction over treating small businesses as consumers. That is something that the FTC does not have a problem with. We have brought many cases involving scams that are directed at small businesses. We can treat a small business as a consumer, and we can bring cases on their behalf. So
Very good.
I
point.
just wanted to clarify that there is an agency that can help if a small business is a victim of a scam.
We have the head of the Clement Street Small Business Association, so maybe we can connect afterwards. Okay, great. Now let's go to Mava. Sorry.
No, pleasure to be here. So Mabel Elise Brown, I'm an attorney. And I'm the Director of Housing and Economic Rights Advocates, as Sandy said. Thank you, FTC. Never have I loved law enforcement so much as when we first started working at my office on mortgage law. I'm like, law enforcement, we need more of it. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the partnership and the ability that you have to do things that we can't do. And it's a powerful tool for all of us to take advantage of. So a couple words about our agency. So Housing and Economic Rights Advocates provides free legal services across the state of California to both low and moderate income people for free. We are focused on household financial stability. We work on a vast range of debt and credit problems, from student loan debt problems to debt settlement company problems, credit cards, some auto repo, an ever expanding list of the realities that people face. It includes on the credit side, the flip side of debt, identity theft, errors in credit reporting, and then credit used as a proxy for unlawful discrimination when people are trying to access housing. And so this is the universe that we all live in. Credit as a decider of what it is that we get access to as human beings. You can contact our office. I'm leaving a few cards up here, but contact our office by email, inquiries@heraca.org, or give us a call, and staff will call you back. We try to keep it as open of a door as we possibly can, because we also are learning from you. about what's happening, and we're both sad and happy when we learn about new scams directed at vulnerable communities. We're happy to learn about them so we can work on it. And sad that there's just an ever proliferating quantity, ever growing quantity of different kinds of scams. One of the things I want to build on something that you were talking about, Desiree, which is you were sharing some advice about, hey, folks, if you feel as if you have been scammed, do not feel as if this was your fault. Do not hesitate to seek help. I also want to build on that by talking about the fact that actually, even if you are in debt, whether it's a legitimately acquired debt, it's debt that you knowingly got into and you didn't really feel that bad about it and it wasn't predatory, there's still many legal options that you have for managing that debt. Do not assume just because you think you legitimately owe, and this is a giant you, all of you in the room, all of us, but all the people you're going to write stories for who are going to hear this. There are different laws that cover different types of debts. For example, student loan debt has its own universe of special federal laws that cover what your rights are as a consumer and gives you options for getting out of problems. Similarly, there are other types of state and federal laws that help protect you, to help you get out, community members get out of the burden of the debt that's making it hard for you to pay rent, pay your mortgage, handle other things in life. So don't assume just because you think, well, I wasn't really scammed, so therefore I'm just stuck with this. That's not necessarily true actually at all. Feel free to reach out to our office, the more the merrier. We welcome that you make contacts. Also to build on what Desiree was talking about, some of the other types of abuse, but in the abuse arena, we see a lot of targeting of API homeowners for equity stripping scams. In other words, for scams that end up either forcing the sale of the family home or end up taking value, equity out of the home by way of a loan for a dollar amount that's much higher than what the homeowner thought it was going to be, with monthly repayment amounts that are much higher than what was promised. Older adults in particular are targeted because they've got more, not only because of this perception of vulnerability, but because there is more equity to be stolen. We're also seeing, and I know our allies and colleagues and other organizations are seeing this, home improvement scams like nobody's business. And again, older adults are particularly vulnerable because the house is aging along with our bodies. It needs love too. And some of that love sometimes costs money. There are people who have a cottage business of reaching out to you, to your home, knocking on your door, and offering what seem like great services. But consistently, we hear homeowners, and we're helping homeowners who are being pressured into taking out much bigger loans than what they thought they were getting into. They're getting lied to, flatly lied to about what the repayment amount is going to be monthly. The amount of just rampant gross lying is shocking. And I think that's actually part of why it works, because you can't believe somebody would look you in the face and flatly lie. I also want to call out docu-signing as an element of fraud, where it's being used as a tool for falsifying signatures of residents. So another message to really get out there is to be careful to take your time. You may be feeling anxious and desperate. To take your time, get as many documents in writing as you can. Come to our office, go to Desiree's office, go to Bay Area Legal Aid, go to other great agencies across our Bay Area and across our state. Slow the process down. And be mindful of the fact that just because something looks like it might have your signature, somebody else may have signed on your behalf without your permission. And it's something that we see as an abuse targeting older adults, immigrant households, people of color.
Could I ask one question? And it came from our initial conversation. You have a personal friend is Chinese and who is business savvy. And like Jean Ho indicated, this happens as Desiree, as all our speakers have said, it's not just low income people, it's upper middle class people, it's professional people. Could you just end with the story of your friend? Without, I know he couldn't come, but it's a very telling story.
Okay, thank you for asking and reminding me. So a friend of mine, well-educated, Chinese Korean mix actually, and he fell into a cryptocurrency scam. And he invested so much money that I'll never know what the actual dollar amount was. But apparently it was a significant 6-figure dollar amount. This person had retired and became well-educated, and we have a kind of a lot of mixed messages going on out there. We aren't sure where to get accurate information. We aren't sure whom we can trust. Sometimes we think we can trust people who look like us, sound like us. Sometimes we feel very contrarian and we're like, no, I'm going to trust the guy over there who tells me not to trust anybody, but wants us to trust them. That was what my friend's experience was. He's trying to be smarter than the average guy. He thinks maybe he is. And maybe he is. But he also got pulled into something where he thought, he believed, I'm going to be one of those smart guys that outsmarts government, outsmarts other businesses. And I'm saying these words aloud because that messaging is out there very broadly. And in the process, and so he took friends' advice and reported to the FBI and to other law enforcement. And it turns out, and I don't remember, I think it was a reporter who talked about an offshore company. The origination of this is offshore. He got hit again by another entity that said they would fix the problem. I'm imagining that it's the same company or division of the same entity or partners, and he gave them money before we could talk about it, before we even know. Which also speaks to the excellent point that people have made repeatedly, which is we make a choice, we feel hideous about it, we're terrified, we feel like fools, we don't want to tell anybody, and then we make another horrible choice. We don't know it's a horrible choice. So if there were one other powerful message I could deliver is, do not be afraid to make a fool of yourself. Nobody thinks you're a fool, or if you fool, let's be fools together. Who hasn't made a hideous, horrible financial decision at some point in our life? Who hasn't gotten a bill that we were horrified about? We didn't want to tell anybody. You can tell our offices. We don't care. We love helping people. It's just normal.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Renee Coe, thank you for being our final speaker. And you have a very significant story to share and a very significant question, which is, can you ever get the money back? So thank you. You are with Alameda County Legal Aid. Noah Zinner is also here from Alameda County Legal Aid. And your turn.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Renee Coe. I'm a third-year law student at Berkeley. And we'll be joining Bay Area Legal Aid in the fall to work on a 2-year project focused on fraud and scams that target immigrants. And Bay Area Legal Aid offers 5 community-based consumer rights clinics per month around the Bay Area. And we'll share, I think we'll share flyers in a number of languages that we hope you can distribute to your networks, to anyone who you think they might help. These clinics deal with fraud, with scams, with identity theft, debt collection issues, debt lawsuits. So if you have a consumer issue, a financial issue, or someone you love does, please share that information with them. As Sandy said, I'd like to start by sharing a story about something that I saw when I was working at the Bay Area Legal Aid Consumer Rights Clinic. We've heard about imposter scams already, and you can see from the
the information from the FTC that they're twice as common as the next category of scams. So I want to sort of personalize that a little bit. We had a young woman come into the Consumer Rights Clinic. She was a student from India, and she'd been in the United States for about a year when she was a victim of an ICE imposter scam. So somebody called her on the phone. They said they're calling from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and that her name had been connected to a crime. And if she didn't pay them a bond of $18,000 immediately, she would be detained and deported. The caller ID was the actual number for ICE. She received a second phone call while she was still on the phone with supposedly ICE from local law enforcement. Their caller ID also matched the San Francisco Police Department. So this was really convincing, really scary. And one thing that scammers do is they emphasize the urgency of the situation so much that you don't have time to do a gut check with a friend or a family member who might be able to sort of ask you the important questions about whether this is real. Most of the time, people, the first person they talk to after they've been scammed is when they realize it was a scam. But they don't get that first conversation because this is done in a way that conveys, you have to do this right now or we will arrest you. Something bad will happen. So she transferred $18,000, which was everything she had to get her through the entire semester. And she did it using Zelle payment transfers and Target gift cards. She spoke to a friend. They said, I think this was a scam. And that same day, she contacted local law enforcement. She contacted the FBI, Target, and Zelle. And she was able to recover about $700, which was the remaining balance on the last gift card that hadn't been fully redeemed. So I think this story highlights some of the challenges with recovering from scams and also some of the areas where our laws could be more protective and we could have some really good tools for helping people to get their money back. There's a law called the Electronic Funds Transfer Act and Regulation E, which basically says that when you report a fraudulent transfer from your bank account within 10 days, the bank has to investigate it. And if the bank doesn't investigate it adequately, they have to refund the money. So even if the scammer's gone, your bank is accountable to you. That's really powerful for people in this kind of situation, but it falls short in some ways. First, it has to be the account holder, it has to be someone other than the account holder who transferred the money. So we've seen other kinds of scams where people get your personal information and then they access your account and transfer it out. There, EFTA works. But there is room to interpret EFTA in a way where if an account holder transfers money out under false pretenses or under duress, we should be able to hold financial institutions accountable in those cases as well. It also hasn't kept up well with financial technology. So we need clarity on whether the Electronic Funds Transfer Act applies to Venmo and Zelle and anything else, like Desiree mentioned, that people are using to manage their money and to transfer money. It should, but those companies say it doesn't, and we really need that to be clear. And finally, banks just ignore it. And so a lot of times it takes bringing a lawsuit against a major bank to recover your money, even though you have a right to it. And that's a gap that I'm hoping to fill, and that Bay Area Legal Aid is hoping to fill with this focused project, focusing on this kind of scam. But not everybody can bring a lawsuit against a big bank. And so, it's challenging to use the tools that we have available. I just want to mention two other legal avenues that can be helpful. There are debt defenses for scams. So if you paid for a scam on a credit card, you took out a loan, you can use that as a defense if the lender comes after you. You aren't necessarily going to get your money back, but it can help you to prevent further harm. And I think one one of the things we've all seen is that these scams can balloon into one harm after another. Yeah, and then I think the last thing I want to share, because gift cards have come up so much and it's something that's really tricky, like legally, they're difficult to trace. So I also just wanted to highlight that there is litigation in the Northern District of California right now against Apple that alleges that they profit off of their gift cards being used for scams. They actually get the lawsuit alleges that they get a 30% cut from all gift cards redeemed through the Apple Store. And that litigation is moving forward. It just survived a motion to dismiss. And so there is some possibility that we'll see more possibilities there. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let's give our speakers a hand because that's really. We have a speaker, a storyteller that Greg Palomares brought, who himself wants to share his personal story. Let's conclude our formal presentations with his story, and then I want to quickly go around the room and tell you what remarkable frontline organizations are in this room, together with some remarkable ethnic media. Getting us together is where we will continue and not make this a one-off. We will continue to have more coverage. So Greg, can you introduce Mr. Komatsu and thank Mr. Komatsu? We have several organizations dedicated to elder abuse, elder challenges I face. And so I'm really happy to have an older target come and share your story. Great.
Thank you, Sandy. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg. I'm the supervising attorney of our Elder and Disability Rights Project. I'm from Asian Pacific Avenue Legal Outreach. And also would like to acknowledge my colleague, Juko Ketmatsu. She's our case manager, social worker. We provide legal services for everyone in the Bay Area. As for my project, we normally help seniors who are age 60 and older, or people who are younger with disabilities. And like what Sandy have said earlier, we are, I would say, blessed to have one of our clients who have agreed to provide his experience as to what happened to him. So without further ado, I'd like to give the mic to Mr. Katsumi Iwasaki.
Katsumi, I'm sorry, mispronounced it. Okay.
Hi, my name is Katsumi Iwasaki. I'm living in San Francisco now. Came from Tokyo. Living in San Francisco more than 30 years now. I met a nice gentleman and we started living together for 22 years. And he died of lung cancer. And ended up our relationship. So after a few years, somebody recommended that, Tommy, don't stay home and cry because nothing happened. So he gave me some information about the website. So I tried to look at them. Many websites only one thing. So this is not work for me. Then finally I saw nice website and a lot of members, all international, all over the world. So I said, this is good. So I registered, paid about $15 for 3 months. And this good thing is that if somebody check on my
profile.
They tell me who checked on my profile. And also, when I got mail, they send me email, you got the new message. So one day I got the new message. I just opened it, and here, American Army high-ranking officer, full in uniform, tall, 6'4", good looking. I said, wow, this is too much to me. But anyway, I answered, just give him my email address. And we start exchange there for a week or so. And one day he asked me, last night, they stay in Syria. So he said that last night we got the bomb and many civilians that trouble. And they went out for check how big damage. Then they took, so this mother and daughter asking help for that. Their house half destroyed. So they took them to shelter for safety. And then next day, he got the visitor, a nice gentleman with two guys. He said that you saved my wife and daughter, so I want to do something for that. So I brought some gold for you, because my place is not safe anymore. And you better keep it. So he accepted, and he doesn't know what to do with this gold. So he sent me email, tell me I got the gold, but not safe here. So I want to ship it to your place and keep it after he retired. So, well, it's okay then. Then he asked me, shipping fee. He has to pay for shipping. And I trusted him because he was the Army high-ranking officer and retired soon with gold and plus nice-looking guy. So I said, okay. So he sent me information where to send money, bank name, bank account, and the place, the location. So I took it to bank, and I want to ship mail, send $20,000. So Karen said, are you sure sending this much money? So I said, yeah, sure. So she processed and charged me about $36 for serving charge. So that was okay. Then a few weeks later, told me I need they asked me for insurance and such a big amount of money. So I said, okay. Anyway, I get gold sooner or later, right? So I lose nothing, money back. So then again, later he asked me, I have to pay tax and such the money. So I understand about the tax, so I send the money again. Then totally about 200,000 already. So I told him, listen, I'm not rich guy. I cannot pay anymore. And he said, tell me this is the final request. So give me 50,000. And this is final. I said I had no money anymore, so I asked my brother to send me money. So I got 50,000, and right away I sent the money to him. So Next day, I send an email, how is it? How you doing? And email, no answer. And the next day, I wrote again, nothing happened. So I lost almost close to 400 gold and my love. So be careful out there, because what a sweet talk, but you don't know what he's planning to get them my money. So I asked Junko-san as social worker to help me what to do. I have no money. Then she helped me a lot, and now I survive a little money for monthly rent and the food. So I'm okay now, but out there, be careful for the, people you don't know. They tell you good thing, but behind them, the bad thing they plan. So I lost about 400,000, but Junko-san tried to help me now. So I hope I might get the money back. And trial starts June 5th.
So we will want to follow up and get more information, but time is running out. So I want to thank you for sharing this personal story. This is, I think, what all of us are trying to say. This goes deep. This can be life destroying, but it clearly hasn't destroyed your life. You have so much spirit, and you can actually make wonderful remarks about, but he looks so good. That's
It's a kind of stupid story, but I have to tell you, warning you, be careful.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I
Let's,
just wanted to say a few things.
okay, but we're running out of time. So could you make it 2 minutes?
Yes, okay. So, yes, I have heard a story of everything from Mr. Iwasaki. And then when he reported his case to police, law enforcement, they took a note of it, and then they came to pick him up and handcuffed him. And they sent him to psychiatric institution. And he was confined for about 10 days. Yes. So the victim was overly victimed by law enforcement, and which we should not miss. And something like this happened to other type of victims at our agency. So I just wanted to make a claim about it.
Is there anything one of our panelists would like to comment about in terms of the interaction with law enforcement?
It's going to be completely unacceptable, completely unacceptable, and I would encourage you to take action against that police agency at a minimum to, if it was here in San Francisco, to file it, to notify, they would choose office to notify the district attorney's office. And I know, because as a lawyer, of course, I want to sue anybody who does something that's horrible. So I definitely want to pursue your rights against them, because that was wrong. It was abusive of you as a senior, it was abusive of you as a man of color, it was abusive of you in many other ways as well. I'm very sorry that happened.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to introduce our wonderful discussants, where we won't have time except over lunch, because we have a wonderful Cantonese lunch. But we have a wealth of resources at the table. And let me start with a representative of Chinese for Affirmative Action, Jing Xia, who has done incredible work monitoring WeChat. So all of this is, all of our reporters realize they're here because I want to hear this more. So just 1 minute each.
So I'm Rosie Pear. I'm from Chinatown nonprofit organization for the Chinese for Affirmative Action. So there's so much to tell, but I want to say scams is definitely targeting everyone. But when it comes to immigrant community, when it comes to limited English speaking community, low income community, it's particularly hard. It's more desperate for our community members. And for in the Chinese community, there in the last 2 or 3 years during the pandemic, there's one kind of scam particularly concerning that we monitor on social media, on WeChat, and Telegram and LinkedIn, all kinds of social media platforms, which is called pig butchering romance scam. Pig butchering, like many people were confused why you want to kill a pig. So pig here refers to the victims. And it's this pig butchering scams is basically started in 2017 and was extremely popular in 2019 in mainland China, and now it's spreading internationally to American, California, New York, Boston, everywhere. So basically, what we see that in the last 2 or 3 years that these scams that there's usually 3 scams. The first scam is called looking for a pig. So they'll target the right people and then they fight you, fill you up, build a relationship, and then use whether credit currency, investment, or online gambling, all kinds of ways to get your money out of it. Anyway, because of time issue, I just want to raise a concern of that this kind of particular scams in our community. And also, I know how difficult my community members that the challenges they have. They don't know any office they can report to. They don't know any lawyers they can contact. They even everything communication is on WeChat. The people they can just disappear overnight with their fake ID. So anyway, because of time issue, I just really appreciate our speakers here today. Provide all the resources. I will for sure get a business card and share your resources with our community members.
Thank you. Thank you. Edith Yamanoha, and from the Fulton Institute.
Yes, hi, I'm a program director for the Aging Services Fulton Institute. I think I was invited here today because we provide tech support and tech training to older adults and adults with disabilities.
I qualify on both counts.
So as far as this topic today, we do try to inform and educate, especially older adults who speak Cantonese. I would say that maybe 60 or 70% of our clients are from the older adult low-income community. And we just try to give them some tips. Surprisingly, we haven't heard too many people, but then again, I think as many have mentioned that they're too embarrassed to maybe share some of the scams that they may have experienced. So we do presentations at local libraries and also at the senior housing sites. We believe that we need to go to the senior housing locations to actually bring the technology and information to the individuals who live in their own communities. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to quickly introduce
Oh,
yourself?
sure. I'm Morgan Mapes. I am a small business owner in San Francisco on Clement Street. I was victim to the ADA scam, which I'm really hesitant to call it a scam because it could be interpreted as vigilante justice. It speaks about the Adult with Disabilities Act and how people can sue for personal gain. And so this one company, one law firm opened up thousands of open cases in California, and it felt very predatory for me. But as a queer Black woman, I'm not going to infringe on anybody's civil rights. Like, that's just not what we're doing. So yeah, I think the city's done a good job of fighting this by starting some grant funds that can help with your business entry. And if you guys have any or know any retail people, you can direct them my way. I work with the San Francisco Council of District Merchant Associations. I sit on the board of that profit. So I have my card here. And if you guys want to discuss any if you have any issues with that, you can reach out to me.
Thank you so much. And let's see, who is next from our community-based organizations? Who did I miss? Because the final people I will ask, Luan T. Lay, Luan, from Laney College, who has a experience you want to share. Where, Luan, there you are. And then we're gonna break for lunch. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Wendy, I'm a student ambassador at Laney College. I have get a lot of fraud scam, but other things is even affect me because they call me, they say your credit card is messed up, your social messed up, but I don't worry about this because I cannot do anything about that. But I have a big experience is about my bank. One day when I was driving 6 months ago, then my phone calling said, I see the number is something like 800 because I'm driving. So I think these things are reliable phone. So I press and they say someone tried to access your account in Bank of America. It's not you, please press 1. So
Yes.
I pressed 1. So after that they asked me to press 2, 3, but when because I was driving, so that's why I don't go continue. So I up the phone. They keep on calling me, please press 1, something like this, keep on repeating. So I just press 1 to confirm that it's not me who want to access my account. After a few days, they totally forget about this matter. And when I want to access to my account to pay, I cannot access to my account. And they say like, please verify your identity from my website. But this is a reliable website. So I try to confirm, say my name, my social, my phone number, but they say it's not your social number. So they say, please contact your bank. So I go to my bank and the bank said your account has been locked up because someone tried to use the AAPI to use for some transaction about a few thousand from New York City. So they say like, oh, what's happened? I never use AAPI because I usually say the Bay Area. They say because maybe you get some phone and when you press 1, they get access to your account and they go to my account and they change my social number. They want to change the social number to access to my account. So that's why, but because I have something like before I have something that I want to protect my account, so I do something before. That's why they lock down my account. I didn't lose money, but my account they locked down and I have to bring my social. I have to bring my ID to the Bank of America. To reopen my account, I have to change my ID. I have to change my password. So lucky I don't lost money, but this thing is very bad experience I get about the fraud and the scam.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Each of our students from Laney have told us what their experiences are. So if you talk to them, they may be able to also share their stories with you. We have the wonderful organization Consumer Action in the room, and that is Jamie Wu. And we also have the Korean Community Center of the East Bay. These are so valuable as resources. Would you give us 2 or 3 more minutes? And then we have the Consul General from Mongolia, who is also here. All of us as reporters want to talk to you. All of us really to continue covering the story of scams need your help. So you're in our list of sources that everybody in this room will get afterwards. But I would like to just ask you for 3 more minutes, 4 more minutes to introduce yourselves so everybody knows you're here and how to reach you.
Jamie Wu. Hi, my name is Jamie Wu. Oh, thank you. My name is much better. My name is Jamie Wu. I'm working for the Consumer Action since 2006. And this year, November, Consumer Action going to celebrate its 52-year anniversary in Washington, D.C. And Consumer Action really provide diverse consumer education and advocacy. And my job is focused on the Chinese community because I'm very lucky. I speak Mandarin, Cantonese, Baisan, and Taiwanese.
Wow.
So, and my workers include like contact with media. Every time when something happened, the media maybe call me. The Chinese media. I need to provide the most updated news. Try to alert our community. And I also do the presentation with CBO for their clients, like in person or Zoom. But before pandemic, I did lots of in-person presentation. But after pandemic, most of us just a Zoom presentation, which is still very good. And I also translate all Consumer Actions module, educational module, from English to Chinese because of website. We have a multilingual website and publications. So we do have, we also have the trilingual hotline. I welcome people can call the hotlines.
Do you have a number?
Yes, 415-777-9635. And you can, it's a 24/7 hour voicemail box. You just leave your message, one word, and your name, the phone number, easy to contact you. Then we'll try to answer you immediately. Yeah, Chinese, you can press 2 after the phone number. Just press 2. Leave your number.
You'll probably get Jamie.
Yeah, so I know because after the pandemic, we all know the Chinese community has the impact by it's very greatly impact for the all kind of scams. So every time we have to be very careful, and we also answer all the complaints or questions.
Thank you very much to you and your colleague for coming. Now, let me go to the Korean Community Center of the East Bay. Do you want to just introduce yourselves? And then we'll end with the Consul General of Mongolia.
Yes, hello, my name is Joanne Lee from Korean Community Center of East Bay. We normally focus in Alameda County, but we actually field calls, including issues about scams from Contra Costa, Santa Clara, all throughout California. So actually, we're really glad to connect at this space today. I think I'll go ahead and maybe speak for both of us, and then I'll introduce you to my colleague, Taeyoon. A couple of the points that my colleague, within a minute, will share in a language that's more comfortable for her. It is going to be just sharing one story about a small business in our community that has been scammed recently, and the really interesting, conniving ways and very smart ways that they've used to get the trust from the consumer. We've been seeing an increase of our community base get targeted through YouTube as many people, they transition from their personal television sets, right, to using social media as their main form of entertainment. They're seeing a lot of targeted ads for specifically seniors in both the Korean and English languages that say, hey, if you haven't received your stimulus check, right, especially for Social Security programs and Medicare, and these are people whose livelihood, they greatly depend on these federal benefits. So we're seeing that people are being scammed to go into giving their personal information. And then once they give all of that, that's when they get inundated with the follow-up phone calls, the very personalized text messages. And these scams also know their personal information, meaning they know their case numbers, they know the case history that they have gone through with these programs too, which has been quite alarming. So I will end there and Taeyun will speak a little bit about the small business story, and then I will translate.
네, 저희 커뮤니티에서는 지금 PG&E에서 사기를 정보 사기 행위를 한 스팸 전화를 받으신 분이 계십니다. 그래서 그쪽에서는 이제 그분의 케이스 넘버라던가 히스토리를 다 알고 계셨고요. 그래서 PG&E를 믿고 돈을 젤로 보내셨는데 결국은 그 스캠이 이제 스캠인 걸로 알려주셨고 그 부분에 대해서는 현재는 신고를 했지만 돈을 받을 수 없다고 지금 피해 상황을 말씀하시기도 하셨습니다. 그리고 또한 이제 본인의 홈리스 아드님의 이름을 대상으로 해서 캘플래시 문자를 받으셔서 그것 또한 스캠으로 되었다는 걸로 알려졌습니다.
So she's quickly raising two company stories, like I mentioned. The specific for the small business, they received a call from PG&E. I do think that's a familiar story for small businesses. But this was unique in that this scam call had the case number, the account number, had again the case history of what they went through with the PG&E utility company. So in this scenario, they felt like they had to do a quick payment through Zelle. And when they reported this to PG&E, they said, "I'm sorry," and that was that. And they haven't been able to get their money back in any way. And also, just the last story that they lifted up was someone who is a CalFresh recipient. Again, it was interesting that the person that texted them and did the scam through text had information about very specific personalized information about the info that they gave to the CalFresh application, right? And because of this, she felt like there was no time to respond, and again was scammed through this. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being so patient to impart this very good information. And now, Baika Kunsa, who's also a journalist and the Consul General of Mongolia here in San Francisco, wanted to say a few words about his community and their experience with scams.
Thank you, Sandy, for the introduction. Unfortunately, I'm not the general consul. I'm a consul, second in general command. So sorry for that. I will speak very shortly because the lunch is ready. But I'll tell you a joke. Is that okay for you?
Yes.
It's only like a 2 or 3 sentence joke. Okay. I think you heard this before. The police found a body in Lagos, Nigeria. And they entered to the apartment and they found billions of dollars. And then also they found like millions of email addresses. Apparently this man was the head of the family fund, and he was trying to give away his money to all over the world. But nobody believed him. So it's a sad story. We really wanted to wish that it could be true, but unfortunately, a lot of people all over the world were tricked in this joke, and they actually lost billions and billions of dollars of money. That's why we are here. We are here for the Mongolian community, and we're trying to actually give the information, up-to-date information, correct information to the Mongolian community. Unfortunately, not a lot of people actually just come out just because of all these situations. But they tend to, ask from their family members or community members who do not have right or up-to-date information. So that makes it a lot harder for them. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to collect all the information and translate them into Mongolian language. And hopefully we can have a space on the FTC site. Hopefully we can, these students, Mongolians, can actually help us to translate those information. And hopefully we can direct them to the FTC site, which is the most accurate and most up-to-date information. And so we try to actually just establish the YouTube or Instagram channel where people can actually give information in Mongolian language. Maybe maybe give them some awareness, give them some information in our language, maybe probably both in English and Mongolian language. So that's what we are approached to Sandy a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully we can work on that. Thank you.
How many Mongolian Americans are there in Bay Area?
Up to 6,000 to 7,000 Mongolians, and it is growing. It is growing really rapidly.
And nationally?
Nationally, about 40 to 50,000.
Thank you so much. Okay, you've all been very patient. The FTC has two very important flyers in your folders. One talks about the multilingual website, the many languages that are available. And the other is an example of the consumer alert that you can all now be able to get, which really are wonderful. Are they 3 times a week or twice a week or what? Every day, consumer alerts, which are really important. So it's like your door prize, you will all be offered the chance to access the consumer alert from the FTC. So thank you. Let's give a hand to everybody. But your price for leaving is you have to have some lunch. You really have to enjoy lunch and connecting to the great resources we have, including the students. So a hand to everybody. Thank you to our media.